Welcome to episode 112 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we're chatting to footballing legend that played in the English League and the Scottish League, Richard Gough. Good afternoon, Richard. Well, I suppose it's good morning for you.
It's good morning here, Adam, in San Diego.
How's it going all the way there in the US of A?
Just like the rest of the world, I suppose, with the pandemic. But in this area that in California, we haven't been too badly hit. I think it's a bit north of us in LA. So it's just a strange time for the whole world, all the football being shut down, everything being shut. It's been a strange 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, it's been absurd. I'm a Man United fan, and I've sort of been watching their last couple of games, and they're playing amazing football, but it's hard to get excited about it just because there's zero atmosphere.
Yeah. I like it that you're a Man United fan. You're a typical Man United fan that doesn't live in Manchester. Funny enough, like you live in Johannesburg, so that's most of the Manchester supporters.
I've got the excuse of my father being from Manchester.
Okay, then you've got one. Then there's family ties.
Exactly. Richard, Interesting story you've got. You were born in Sweden to a Swedish mom and a Scottish dad, and then moved to South Africa at a very young age. That's a strange sort of move for a Swedish and Scottish couple.
Yeah. My dad and mom met in London. My dad was a paratrooper. He was in the Red Beret, and they met in London. Mom had come over from Sweden just to be a nurse. They met in London. Long story. They got married. My dad was on manoeuvres in Bahrain. For the Red Beret, and my mom was pregnant with me. So he went either go back to Scotland and have the child, or go back to Sweden. My dad didn't want me to be born in England, so she went back to Stockholm. So that's how I was born in Stockholm. My mother lives there still to this day. She's still in Stockholm. But Dad played for the British Army team, and got bought out of the army by Charlton Athletic, and eventually came out to Johannesburg in 1965 to play for Highlands Park when I must have been about 3 at the time. And so that's how we landed up in Johannesburg, the family. I've got a brother and sister. Brother Jamie who's involved in golf, and a sister who's involved in yoga, and they both still down in South Africa. So I've got, my ties are still very strong to South Africa, and I've traveled down there a lot. So that's how we landed up down there. My dad played for Highlands for a long time, and so I went to King Edward's School in Johannesburg, and then to Highlands North until the age of about 15, when I left and tried to go overseas and become a professional football player. And I was fortunate enough to have made a little bit of a career out of it. So I was a very lucky boy.
A little bit of a career. Richard, tell us about that first trip over. It was to Ipswich, wasn't it, to go for a trial?
Oh, well,
I mean, how did it come about?
My best mate and I, we always wanted, my dad obviously being in the professional football world, we always wanted to be football players, and we realized that to get over, we were fortunate enough to have the opportunity to go at about 15. So we went, myself and my best friend called Mish Davray, who's very well known out in South Africa as well, because he's been with Ajax of Cape Town and Bloemfontein Celtic as a coach, and a lot of other clubs all around the world. We went over at 15, the two of us, and when I think back now, I was far too young to leave our homes. I mean, kids were at Ipswich from Scotland, and it was about 300 miles up the road, and they were homesick and going back, and we were 6,000 miles away. But we both went there. Mish actually stayed. Bobby Robson signed Mish. Hey, boy, a wee dog here. And then I went back the following season to Charlton Athletic and signed with Charlton Athletic as an apprentice professional. Came back to South Africa again, but then went over to Dundee United in February of 1980, and got picked up, got signed as a 17-year-old then. And it's sometimes you get lucky, and I got lucky in the way that with Dundee United we had a very strong team with a good youth policy, and managed to play quite a lot of games at a young age, and won the league with Dundee United in 1982 and 83, which won't happen again, and I'm sure in their history. But we had a good team and a very good manager called Jim McLean, a legendary manager, and so that got me off on a right path, into the professional game.
With Dundee United, you had 165 appearances and 23 goals. Not too shabby for a central defender.
No, but that time I was probably Adam. I was playing right back a lot. I had two very good centre backs at that time, so I was only broke into the team about 18, 19, and was there. Mostly played right back. I had two very good central defenders called Paul Hegarty and David Neri, and we just had a good all-round team. I mean, we managed to make the semi-final of a European Cup, which is a Champions League now. And if you can think of a small team like Dundee United doing that now, it would be unheard of to do that. We made the semi-final of the European Cup in 1984, and so at that time I was a marauding right back and got a few goals for Dundee United that maybe put me on the map as well,
And Walter Smith was in your team with you, who later became manager.
Yes.
But Richard, tell us a bit about the rivalry between Dundee and Dundee United. Is it much like the rivalry between Rangers and Celtic?
Yeah, it's similar to a rivalry in any city, just on a smaller basis. From Dundee. I mean, the big game for us during that period was we had to go to Dundee on the last day of the season to win the championship, and if we got a win there, we would win the championship in 82, 83, and we managed to win 2-1 that day. So the rivalries, there's no rivalry like Rangers and Celtic, and I've been fortunate to play a Dundee derby, a London derby with Spurs and Arsenal, Rangers and Celtic, a little spell with Nottingham Forest for 3 or 4 games, and I played against Derby, Nottingham Forest, Derby. So I played in the Everton one, Everton Liverpool as well. So they're all great derbies, but there's nothing like the Old Firm derby for just for atmosphere and the tension that comes with that game.
And you were at Dundee United when Alex Ferguson was sort of really starting off his career at Aberdeen. Was he as strong a manager at Aberdeen as he proved to be at Man United? I mean, he went all the way in Europe as well with Aberdeen.
Yeah, he was. I mean, at Scottish football in the early 80s, was Dundee United won the league. Aberdeen won the league twice. So that was very unusual in Scottish football. Celtic had a very strong team at that period as well. But we had a very good World Cup. We were making World Cups. I was fortunate after playing 2 World Cups. But we made, we made the 78 World Cup, 82 World Cup, 86 World Cup, 90 World Cup. So we made 5 World Cups in a row, which is, we haven't made a World Cup now for, 20 years. So as for some reason, our teams were very, very strong during that period. And Aberdeen and Dundee United, they were called the New Firm during those early years. Because of managers could keep their players during that period, once you signed a contract with a club, you were kind of a bit of a prisoner. There was too much power with the clubs. It's gone the other way now. There's too much power with the players. But because they could keep on to players, I mean, Aberdeen had a great team as well during that period. That Gordon Strachan, who later went to Man United, Alex McLeish, Willie Miller, Jim Leighton also went down to Manchester United, so that they had Steve Archibald went to Tottenham. So they had fantastic players as well, so it was a really good crop of players in Scotland during that period, in the early 80s, I would have said. But Ferguson was, McLean, the manager at Dundee United, and Ferguson, they ruled by fear, the two managers. It was a different time. There was a lot of bullying, I would call it. But the strong survived. The strong came through. And he took that policy to Manchester United as well, Sir Ali. He was my manager in the 1986 World Cup for Scotland. So, I had a closeness with him that I think he always liked me as a person. He always liked me as a player. Even when I went back to Everton, my first game was against Manchester United when I was 37, 38 years old. So, he was great man and a great manager as well, as he proved at Man United.
And Richard, I mean, let's talk about you as a player. I mean, you were an incredibly strong central defender, reliable, but very slick as well. You were almost, many could say, the first of that classy type of central defender, that we know today, like the Rio Ferdinand or that type of player. I mean, you really,
I think it was because maybe I started off. I always started as a centre back. My dad was a defender, so I always played as a defender anyway. I mean, I can remember him saying to me when I was young, do you want to get kicked or would you like to kick people? And I said, well, I think there's only one answer for that. I'd rather kick people than be kicked. He said, well, you play at the back, So I watched him playing, and my father was a good player. I watched him play it. And then I obviously started as a central defender. Dundee United, I learned a lot about the game I'm playing right back, and also played right back for Scotland. So my use of the ball was okay. My use of the ball wasn't bad as a central defender as well. So I can remember when I went down to England to play for Tottenham, and I played for Scotland against England about 3 or 4 times and scored the winning goal for Scotland in 1985, I think, against England. But I can remember Glenn Hoddle, who was one of the best players England ever produced, and he said to me when I went down to Tottenham, he says, listen, Gough, you can pass the ball for a centre back. So he said, when you get it, just make your first pass me. And I went, I'd been playing at Dundee United, with midfield players that run back and track back. And I said to Hoddle at the time, I said, why would I make why would you be my first look, He says, because I'll be free, And I said, well, that means you don't obviously just play, you don't obviously run back with anyone, And he went, no, I don't do that, So right enough, I did make my first pass him, and most of the time I used to look for him as soon as I got it, And he was probably, I think Clive Allen scored 49 goals that season, and most of the assists was by Glenn, who was a marvelous player, So, but the game's changed. The game's changed a lot, But I think you're right when I say I would have liked to have played in this era as well as that era, because I would have fitted into this era quite comfortably as well, because, and then a lot of the players from, maybe 20, 30 years ago would have been sent off very early on, because they wouldn't have, especially the centre backs. We had some real good, tough centre backs who would have been sent off very early on in some of the games, I think.
I think it was a completely different game to what it is now. But you
Yes.
joined Spurs in 1986 for a whopping £750,000. which in today's language is probably about 100 million.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And then had a really good 14 months there. But when I was at Dundee United, Rangers had tried to sign me. And I was a Rangers supporter as a child growing up. Due to my father, obviously, it was also, we were a Rangers family. So I think it was always a dream to sign for Rangers one day. But I didn't think, I just signed a new 5-year contract with Tottenham because I thought that chance had gone. And I had a very good season. We reached the FA Cup final, which unfortunately we lost to Coventry. But our team was very good. We had, like I said, we had Glenn Hoddle, we had Ray Clemens, we had Gary Mabbutt, we had Ardiles, we had Waddle, Clive Allen scored 49 goals. I think we finished second or third that 86-87 season. And if we had kept that team together, we would have done well. But Rangers came in for me again, and they made a ridiculous offer. I think it was £1.5 million. It was double the money that Tottenham had paid. And Tottenham came to me and said, "Look, we've received an offer. They didn't want me to go, but what it was as well was that the English clubs were banned from Europe during that 5-year period from 1986 to 1991. So a lot of the top English players went to play in, a lot of them went to Rangers because Graham Souness was the manager and he signed Terry Butcher, Chris Woods, Gary Stevens, Trevor Stevens, Ray Wilkins. So it was an anomaly really about a lot of the really good players managed to get to Rangers during that period. And Rangers were obviously paying big money as well to get them there as well. So it was a good fix.
And you were the first Scottish player whose transfer was over $1 million. You say I think it was 1.1 or 1.5. That must have been quite a nice feather in your cap.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, but didn't really worry too much about that. Didn't worry too much about that.
And your first match was for Rangers was against Dundee United, which you guys lost, unfortunately.
I know. I can remember it up at Tannadice. I didn't get a very good reception there either, so all good,
But then your second one, you scored in a 2-2 draw with Celtic, so you must have become an instant cult hero.
Yeah, it was a strange one because my home debut at Ibrox was against Celtic, and we were 2-0 down, and we only had 9 men. Butcher and Chrissy Woods had been sent off that day, so I managed to score in the last minute, to make it 2-2. So, so it was a good start, a good home debut. And we didn't actually have such a good season that first season because Big Terry Butcher broke his leg. There was a lot of changes going on, and there was a lot of player movement, put it that way. But after that, we got on the right track,
And that move to Rangers came after a long time. Obviously, you'd been a lifelong Rangers fan, but you'd had a trial with them when you were 18, and they didn't take it up. So it must have been really like an amazing moment to actually have finally got there now.
Yeah. When I was 17, it was just before I went to Dundee United, I went to Rangers first, and I was there for about 10 days, 2 weeks. And they said that they had enough people in my position, so just shows you, that's happened to a lot of players as well, over the years that they go to a club and then they come back, so it's very difficult, I think, to tell players at 17 as well. That's why, I think a great example was, the lad Vardy. Happened to a lot of people, but Vardy in particular, he's playing in non-league football at 25, 26, and he goes on to tear up the Premiership. You think, how did that happen?
And you spent a lot of time with Rangers, over 400 appearances. You won 9 consecutive league titles with them, majority as captain, and you were the only player to win the 9. But you were captain pretty much wherever you were. Dundee United, Spurs, Rangers. What was it about you and your style that was obviously an instant hit with the managers to make you captain?
Dundee United, not well, the reserve team, yeah, but we had a good captain there, Paul Hegarty at Dundee United. Tottenham, yeah, became captain quite soon there, and then Terry Butcher was captain at Rangers, but I took over from him when he left. I just think that, you know, I had a lot of experience at a young age, a lot of Scotch caps, and I wasn't really a bawling and shouting captain. I just tried to lead by example. And I think the good thing was that I was always surrounded by very, very good players around about me. And I think that obviously helps you a lot, you know. But as a captain, I didn't think I would ask anyone else to do anything that I wouldn't do myself, you know. And it just was experience. Maybe it was my position at the back as well. You know, I think it's always good to have a defender as a captain. You know, you see some of the foreign teams having the goalkeeper as a captain or the centre forward as a captain. I think it's always a good, you know, from having a defender at the back being the captain, you know.
I think I don't know if the role of the captain, I mean, it's still incredibly important, but I don't see captains captaining teams now like they used to, like the likes of yourself, the likes of Brian Robson, probably right up to sort of John Terry era. I suppose Jordan Henderson for Liverpool this season has been a bit like that. But why do you think players are no longer as vocal, and I think they seem to have gone quiet and lack a bit of leadership?
I think it has. I mean, I think, like you say, the game has changed a wee bit. You know, I don't think dressing rooms are as volatile as they were. I'll say this in a nice way. In 20 years ago, you know, Robson was you mentioned Brian Robson. Brian Robson was one of the best players that I played against in my long career. Great, you know, great captain, great leader, whatever you want to call it. I just think the players are making so much money now that they seem to be quieter. They don't seem to worry about as much as you know, what we did maybe 20, 25 years ago with the, you know, like if we had a rough time in our dressing room, the manager wouldn't even need to come in. You know, we had a lot of captains in my team that I played in at Rangers, especially, you know, Mark Haitley, Alistair McCoy, Stuart McCall. We had a lot of leaders in the dressing room, which you need. And we would be fighting with each other. We wouldn't need the manager to come in and sort us out. You know, we would have words with each other because we would know that we weren't at the level that was expected of us. And I just don't think that happens today. You know, I know it doesn't happen today.
You know, I mean, precious.
Yes, and I think that academy football's got a lot to do with that somewhere along the way. And look, I mean, I don't think it's maybe a good thing. It's not a bad thing, but I don't think. I'm sure. You know, when Steven Gerrard was the captain of Liverpool, who would be the latest Man United captain? You know,
I think since Roy Keane, I don't think it's Maguire now, but I don't think since Roy Keane has been anybody.
Keane. I mean, I like Keane. It wasn't, you know, I liked him as a player. I liked him as a captain because he just said what he feels. You know, I mean, he said after the game the other day, you know, a couple of classic remarks. You know, I mean, he says the goalkeeper and the centre back Maguire. I mean, he wouldn't have let them on the bus. You know, now that's a classic Keane remark, but I know exactly what he's getting at. You know, I mean, you paid a lot of money to win games, and your goalkeeper throws one in the net, and your centre back lets a guy just walk by him and just have a shot. You know that. So I can imagine if he was captain at half time, those two would have got an almighty talking to. It probably would have been more than a talking to. It could have ended up in a fight. So 20 years ago, if Keane did that in the dressing room, Ferguson would let that happen, because it will all sort itself out. And De Gea would either want to leave, and Maguire must probably take it on the chin, and say, okay, Roy, that's my fault, and no problem. Maybe, but like you say, if De Gea was a bit precious, he might want to leave or something. Then he would leave if he couldn't handle the pressure of playing for Man United, So yeah, but it's changed days.
And Richard, you played for a UK 11 against a rest of the world 11. You had the likes of Robson, Waddle, Beardsley in your team. I mean, what a team. That could have cleaned up pretty much anybody, and it did clean up the rest of the world. But you played against Maradona in that game. Tell us a bit about having to play against him, because he was a wizard. Yeah,
he was one of the, I can remember that day because he got paid a lot of money to come play, and it was a charity event. I think it was England's 100th year in the FA, and Maradona got paid money to play. No one else did, and Platini was the man of the match out there. I can always remember it, just walking about, pinging 50-yard passes all over the field, and just right into Lineker played up front. I think for the rest of the world, because he was at Barcelona at the time, and Platini was just picking him out, just like the ball just right in front of them, and it was amazing. But some good players. Maradona, that was the only time I actually, because when we played against Scotland, we beat Argentina 1-0 before the 1990 World Cup, but he wasn't playing, he was injured. So he never played that day. But lucky enough to have played some really good players, really top players.
Obviously, Maradona was technically probably one of the most gifted. Who was the hardest player you played against in terms of physicality?
As a centre forward, it's difficult, difficult to say. But I was reminded because they've been shown that 1987 Cup final a few times when Tottenham, and one of the if you're talking about a physical centre forward to play against, was a lad called Cyril Regis, who passed away. He was a fantastic player. And the trick with him was you didn't want to get him very angry. And he was a lovely man. He was a gentleman. So I used to call him Mr. Regis when we played against him, just to keep to keep him on side, And if you elbowed him, you apologise to him because you didn't want to get him crazy, But he was a top player. But good players, for centre forwards, I played against them all really. I played against Van Basten, I played against Voller, I played against Klinsmann, played against all the top players at that time of that period, and they all had something different, They're all great, very, very difficult people to play against.
And Rich, I mean, you've had a phenomenal career. You were Players' Player of the Year in 1986 with Dundee. You were Player of the Year in 1989. You won 9 league titles with Rangers, 3 Scottish Cups, 6 League Cups, number of Scottish caps as captain. Has there been one moment that's been your standout moment in your career?
I think when we clinched 9 in a row, that was a big moment for the football club at Rangers to equal Celtic's 9 in a row. They had a magnificent team during the 60s and early 70s. So no one ever thought that would happen, to get 9 championships in a row. But we had circumstances dictated that we managed that, which was and then the 9th season was a very difficult season for us. I think also given the Rangers captaincy, captain in Rangers, I think that was a big moment or proud moment, and also the captain of Scotland. When Andy Roxburgh asked me to be the captain of Scotland that was also a proud moment for me.
And you played under some incredible managers, as you say, Ferguson, Walter Smith, Graham Souness. And then you yourself went into management for a little bit with Livingston. Why is it that Scotland seems to produce these incredibly strong managers?
Well, I think they used to. I'm not sure if we've got as many coming through at the moment as we used to. I think they were tough people, tough upbringing. A lot of them were miners. I mean, when you go back to Matt Busby, you go back to Shankly. They come from mining villages in Scotland. So they had a working class work ethic, and I think they managed to be able to put teams together well. Good teams. They were good with people, and Ferguson continued that. Ferguson continued that onwards as well with Scottish managers. So hopefully more the next few years. But it looks like to be it's Johnny Foreigner at the moment. They're the new thing. But I can remember in the Premiership not too long ago, there was maybe 6 or 7 Scottish managers in the Premiership, maybe like 10 years ago. So hopefully that will happen again.
And Richard, you're obviously in the US now, so watching games can't be too easy. Do you still have a burning passion for Rangers and the game and try to catch as many games as you can?
Yeah, I'm an ambassador for Rangers, a global ambassador for Rangers, which is great. Been doing that for about 5 years, 6 years. But I keep an eye on all the clubs that I played for, and I hope they get results on a regular basis. I haven't been to the new Tottenham Stadium. I need to get back there. I haven't been back to Everton either. I need to get back there. That's also a great football club as well. So I was very lucky to play with fantastic clubs, right through my career, and be well remembered, at the clubs as well. So that's good. The games here, I get a lot of the games in America because the NBC bought the Premier League rights, so I get a lot of the English games anyway. So I see a lot of the games. Strange watching the games now with no one there, but they'll come back. They'll come back soon, I'm sure.
And when Rangers were going through their little mishap, it must have been quite tough for you to take on, but great to have them back in the Premiership, and they seem to have got right back up to where they were.
Yeah, well, it damaged the club a lot, like in 2011, 2012, only in Scotland can you put your club, the biggest club in Scotland, only in Scotland could you put them down all 3 divisions or 4 divisions and had to get back. It killed Scottish football for 5 years really. But Scottish football, I don't think has been the same since it was, when I played. I was very fortunate, like I said in the beginning, when I went to Rangers, we would just probably be in the top 8 of the biggest clubs in Britain. Now with the TV money, with the Premier League it's got, Celtic and Rangers still get, 60,000 to the games, every all the games, so they're still looked at as 2 massive clubs, 2 massive football clubs, but not in the best league. Obviously, the best league's obviously the Premiership now at the moment, and all the top players want to come there. So that's the aim for all the Scottish players now, to get down to the Premiership and play. And I think if I was playing now and I was doing the same, you mentioned about the transfer fees and stuff like that. So I had a conversation with Walter Smith, my Rangers manager and my Everton manager, and we were laughing about Van Dijk going for £90 million or whatever it was that he went for, or Maguire going for stuff like that, and he was laughing. He said, "What do you think you would go for?" well, I don't know, I don't know. He says, well, at 24, they'd be paying, £100 million or something for you, He says, because there's not many really great defenders about at the moment. And it's one of the most important parts of the game, So I think that's Van Dijk. The Van Dijk signing for Liverpool's been one of the most important signings for them over the years. They took a chance, a wee bit of a chance, but he's a fantastic player, he's a fantastic football player. And he's been the best player for me in the Premiership the last couple of years.
I think Van Dijk and Alisson, I mean, they had such problems in goal. I think with Alisson shoring up goal, it's those two players have made the difference and really got them over the line, because previously they were losing points from silly mistakes.
Yes.
Richard, just in closing, you mentioned earlier about the level of the Scottish League, and there has been talk over the years about Scotland, about Rangers and Celtic joining the Premier League, a bit like, I suppose, the teams from Wales with Cardiff and Swansea. What is your feeling on them joining? Do you not think it's something that should be looked at? Because with the support that they get, they would be right up there within a few years.
Yeah, they would be. I mean, they would have to go down to the third division or something in England and work their way up. But they would do that, no problem, I think, because the players that they would attract, as well, that would be, the money. It's the money. The money now is what dictates everything. Like if Rangers or Celtic win the league, I think they get, £2 million. If you win the league down in England, you get $500,000. You get 500 million or something. So it's the TV money. So they've been talking about it for a long time, but I'm not sure if it will happen. You could say the same. There is more or less a league outside of a league with the Champions League at the moment. All the bigger teams, they've made it such. When I first got started playing, like I said, with Dundee United, there were 32 teams, and you got put in a hat. And if Liverpool drew Bayern Munich in the first round of the European Cup, that's the way it was, and they had 2 games. And then they soon changed that. By the time 1992 came along, Rangers were one of the first teams. So we played in Champions League. We had the Champions League every year, but they were making it easier for the teams, the bigger teams, to stay in the competitions type thing. And now, I mean, Liverpool wouldn't have won the Champions League, in the old, because they weren't a champion. They weren't champions of their country. So they won the Champions League last year, but they weren't champions of their country. Back in the day, it was the champions of your country that got into the European Cup. So now you can finish 5th in the Premiership and get into the Champions League. So I don't think that's right, but it's all about the big boys now, and making, FIFA, not UEFA, making money. And to do that, you have to have the teams from your top 5 leagues watching. So that's England, Germany, Spain, France, and I'm missing one there. But it's all about the money now. So that's it. Yeah.
And I think it's really been detrimental to those other leagues: the Scottish League, the Belgian League, Danish League,
the Dutch League.
Yeah, the Dutch
League. That's the Italian league. I mean, if you look at AC Milan now and Juventus not too bad, because Juventus, a huge club as well. They still can generate a lot of money, but I mean, because they've got Fiat behind them. But the Italian football in the early 80s was a top league, because they paid the top money in the 1980s and right through that period. That's completely changed now, so still a good league, don't get me wrong, but it's not. And the Spanish league as well, with Barcelona and Real Madrid, they've managed to stay very, very strong. But all the players want to play in the Premiership.
Well, they really made the Premiership the place to be.
Yeah.
Richard, it's been awesome chatting to you today on Sport SA Daily Diary. Thank you for your time. We could talk football all night and all into the morning, but thank you for your time. It's really been fantastic.
All right, Adam. No problems. Thank you very much.
Be sure not to miss tomorrow's episode of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we chat to a South African golfer that's just qualified for the Women's British Open.